Good morning, Sammamish. We're getting ready to go live on our city forum on Facebook Live at noon. Please join us.
Okay, we're going to get right to it. Today we have with us, we have the Police Chief Dan Pengray.
Great to be here.
The City Manager Dave Ruda.
Good afternoon.
And our Emergency Manager Andrew Stevens. We're all very happy to finally be live to answer some of the questions we got from the residents. And thank you to all the residents who submitted questions to us over the past couple of weeks. They were very good questions, and we are ready to answer the questions that came our way. We received a few questions about COVID-related events and guidelines and restrictions and along those lines. Our first question, we're going to go to Dave. Recently, the city announced that they had canceled all large in-person events through July 4th. Can you tell us a time frame and process by which the city will determine whether or not to allow these types of events for the remainder of the year?
Yes, thank you. We follow the governor's guidance and that of the King County Health Officer. As we've all noted recently, the significant rise in COVID and hospitalizations, and we'll be watching that very, very carefully as hospitalizations significantly decrease, as vaccinations take hold and the supply of vaccination gets out to the masses, and we start noticing a significant decline in the number of COVID cases and the continuing testing. We will reevaluate. I will say more like May, we'll be able to have a picture going into the rest of the year.
That's really helpful to know. The next question is along the same lines, but specifically about Skyline High School. Why does Skyline soccer fields not open? Many of Sammamish residents have to travel to Redmond and Bellevue to play soccer every week. There is no data showing the soccer fields increase the risk of COVID-19. In fact, exercises are good for the overall health and well-being of the residents and community. So I plead with the City Council to open soccer fields and other outdoor sports fields.
That's a very good question.
We do a lot of sharing of fields with our school districts, but the Skyline School District in Issaquah School District is not managed by the city of Sammamish. Issaquah School District opened their fields for rentals back on December 8th, and the Lake Washington School District opened theirs on January 4th. The city of Sammamish has resumed its rental of fields back in October. So we take our guidance from the governor's office, but the school districts are in charge of their own fields.
Okay, that's really good to know. And we've heard your comments that you need us to speak louder. I've been told I have a loud voice. I'm going to talk even louder. Do y'all all agree to talk louder too? Right. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go to Andrew for the next questions, our COVID-related questions. Where do we get a COVID-19 vaccine?
All right, give me a second to come over here. Obviously, this is the most important subject I think that everyone is thinking about right now. We've been dealing with COVID for over a year now. You've seen over 420,000 deaths in the U.S., over 25 million people infected. So vaccines are of the utmost importance, and people want to know where they can get them. Right now, the state of Washington, Department of Health, is the deciding body on where vaccines are allocated and who gets them. They're provided through medical providers across the county. And right now the state and county's effort is really focused on mass vaccination sites. That being said, we are currently in phase A1 or 1A and 1B1, meaning that anyone 65 and over is potentially eligible to receive a vaccine. Same if you're 50 and over, living in multi-generational households. And all of the earlier categories in the A1 phases, including first responders, healthcare providers, and people living in high-risk environments such as congregate care facilities or adult family homes. That being said, the demand far outweighs the supply. The recent addition to the 1B1 phases added significant numbers and logistical requirements. Hundreds of thousands of people needing vaccines. So what that means is that the logistics are changing every day. Providers who might have had a vaccine the day before may be out, and it's changing on a weekly basis. So we do need a little bit more patience within our community. That being said, how you're able to figure out if you're eligible is you go to the Find Your Phase website on the Department of Health. It's shared within our Connect Sammamish COVID page. That will ask you a series of questions to confirm your eligibility. Once you confirm eligibility, I think the biggest hurdle people are seeing is then now trying to find the provider. There's also a list of vaccine medical providers through hospitals, through distribution sites across the county. And those will hopefully, you'll be able to schedule an appointment through those sites. It's going to be a challenge. You're seeing backlogs of weeks, possibly months. However, as more vaccines come into the state, you're going to see greater allocations. You're going to see bigger distributions, more medical providers, including local pharmacies, your local doctors, Costco, the hospitals. These are all people trying to get their hands on the vaccine and get into people's arms. So a little bit more patience, but right now the best bet is to work with your medical provider, work with different medical clinics across the area, and the mass vaccination site that's being stood up in Auburn shortly. Thank you.
Andrew, that was some really good information. We did receive some questions about mass vaccinations just in the comments just now, and then one of the residents had also asked, is it possible for SMAM to set up their own mass vaccination station and help its residents get vaccinated quickly, get Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks to help, set up a model for other communities to follow? So that kind of falls in line with what you just were speaking about.
Absolutely. Now, this is something that the city of Sammamish is definitely pursuing. We've entered partnerships with Eastside Fire and Rescue. We've entered into agreements with Issaquah School District, the city of Issaquah, Swedish Medical, and Costco. We meet jointly trying to come up with a solution to possibly establish a mass vaccination site. Again, we are not medical providers, so we are not allocated the vaccine, but we're working with the partners who are to try to make that happen. Now, in the meantime, what we are doing is we are training, we are coordinating, we are establishing these sites, we are doing site reconnaissance on how that would work if the opportunity presents itself. We're training volunteers on the operation of such sites, as well as staff to be able to do this. This is going to be all communicated out to the public as it arrives. Again, it's a changing situation. We require patience on everyone's behalf. Now, in the meantime, though, we are actively pursuing training to distribute the vaccine into arms. All of the EMS providers with Eastside Fire and Rescue are now trained. Within the next week or two, we are looking to establish mobile vaccination clinics to go to adult care facilities and congregate care facilities and treat those most vulnerable who may not be able to have the ability to reach a mass vaccination site at this time. I think it's over to my colleague.
Okay, Andrew, that's really helpful. Lots of COVID questions, and the next one is actually really specific to Kalani. It's a resident from Kalani, has a good question here. It's kind of long, so bear with me. Why is Kalani Boulevard a high-risk area for COVID-19? The problem is that half the sidewalk walkers do not wear masks, and most do not try to keep a 6-foot distance. I'm 70 and wear a mask on all sidewalks, but I'm forced to walk in the street and stand in wet grass because 50% ignore the mask and distancing rule. For safety's sake, our city needs to increase mask and distance awareness on Kalani Boulevard, but posting more visible signs and on weekends, a police person should remind residents to wear a mask when on sidewalks. Our president has issued a wear a mask for 100 days challenge to all Americans. This is a great time to have our city take action on this sidewalk safety issue. What do you have to say about that, Andrew?
Well, I don't think this is an issue specific to Kalani, or Kalani Boulevard for that matter. I think the majority of Sammamish residents are being compliant. They are wearing masks. They are social distancing. Because as we've seen for the last year, those are the biggest tools in our toolbox on how to slow this virus. It is going to take several more months for the vaccine to fully roll out, for herd immunity to be in place. So we must continue these mitigations. So I urge people, when they are outside socializing or when they are outside using sidewalks, using trails, to wear a mask, because you probably are going to be placed in situations where you may be closer than 6 feet to other individuals outside your household. It's not a problem. I think there's vast access to masks. They're widely distributed. You can use a cloth face mask. It does not need to be a medical grade N95, but you're really protecting others. You're protecting the most vulnerable. And like the gentleman who wrote in, he's a high-risk individual, and he should not have to fear using a sidewalk, using a community trail or a park, and being exposed to people who are non-compliant with this order. I urge everyone, do this. It is the biggest tool in stopping this pandemic.
Andrew, thank you. That was really good information to have for that resident in Kalani. So next we have some questions related to public safety. So we're going to come to our Chief of Police, Dan Pengrave. Our first question we have is about burglars, home and car. Seem to be a big problem in the area. What are you planning to do to attack this problem? Do you have any incident criteria on when you increase patrols or become more active about questioning late night, early morning pedestrians? If so, it might be important for residents to know so they report incidents each and every time. Even having a car ruffled through for items could be important instead of non-reporting because nothing was actually taken.
Sure. So there has been an uptick in crime, and that is the norm between the months of November and January. Now, that being said, even though that's normal, even a single crime, it makes a significant impact to the victims, and we are going to do the best that we can to investigate it thoroughly. So no crime goes uninvestigated, but we can't always develop probable cause to make an arrest or determine any suspects. Now, the biggest thing that I can emphasize at this time is people need to call 911 no matter what if there's suspicious activity or any type of crime occurred. Getting onto Nextdoor or the Ring app or in social media and talking about the crime that occurred or complaining that no one has addressed it does not mean that it gets to the police department so that we can document and then determine if we do have a trend or an issue occurring in a neighborhood. So that is one of the most important factors for myself and our department to provide resources to address an issue. So again, we operate best in law enforcement when the community is involved. So I can't emphasize enough that please make that 911 call. It's okay to use. They will send you to a secondary communications person to document and ultimately dispatch an officer. It's great to put it on Nextdoor. Perhaps people recognize the suspect who committed a crime. More people discuss it, and then we get more reports. And again, that's the community being involved. But until someone actually calls 911, we don't know. And so we need your help. Then we'll take our next steps to do thorough investigations, put resources into neighborhoods and areas so that we can make sure that we're addressing the problem. Last but not least, we're constantly working with crime analysis within the sheriff's office and our own department, as well as with all of the other local jurisdictions to make sure and identify and or pass on any information that we have reference possible suspects. And last but not least, which could become a touchy discussion, where will officers make contact or do they make contact with people late at night, etc. If there's suspicious activity, then we are allowed to, and as long as we can document that activity and clearly explain why it is we made a stop, yes, we will go out and about and look for that type of activity, make contact and determine if everything's okay. But it's not random, and it is based on either suspicious activity or violations that may occur, for example, on traffic.
Okay, so Chief, What is Sammamish Police Department doing to stop the distribution of drugs in our community? Why would the police not respond to a 911 call at 12:55 a.m. about the sound of shattering glass in the community, only to find out the next day someone's front window of their home was broken into? We have an email from a Sammamish resident stating they will no longer call the police because they won't even check out situations. Why should we trust the police to handle safety issues within our community?
Okay, well, you should trust the police to answer issues in your community because that's what you pay us for, and that is our job, and that is my expectation of all of my troops. So I guess in short, because that's what we're supposed to do. And you should expect it and have high expectations in how we respond. So two different questions here. The first one being in reference to drugs. Clearly, some of the deaths that we've had in the past involving fentanyl is a tragedy, and we have identified a majority of the people that have supplied those drugs and addressed those issues, and arrests have been made, and we will continue through the help of the community and informants and our officers' due diligence, along with special emphasis teams and King County regional intelligence teams, to identify suppliers and problem houses where these types of activities occur, and then do everything possible to investigate, develop probable cause, and make arrests, hopefully before any other tragedy occurs. So that's constant, ongoing, and I will continue to emphasize how important it is for the community to be willing to get involved, make calls, even from an anonymous nature, so that we can start to do an investigation and follow up. So that's number one. Number two, I actually have information on the concerns raised about the police not responding to a smashed window. That's incorrect. We actually know where that occurred and did our own follow-up in reference to this. And the fact of the matter is, again, nobody called 911. A third party is actually hearing about this, understandable, using social media to be concerned, normal, but it's incorrect. If you don't know, call 911 so that we can respond. If you have a concern, don't hesitate to call me and we'll address it. And in fact, nobody's perfect. We recently did have an audible alarm that an officer responded to. The officer did not get out of the car because of a locked gate, didn't check the commercial building, and ultimately the next day we discovered that a burglary had occurred. That's not okay. We recognized it, and disciplinary action was taken place, and that was placed into the officer's file. Strike one. We take it seriously. We have policies and procedures that specifically address what we are supposed to do in regards to audible alarms, notifications, contacting supervisors, and documenting everything that we do. So that maybe it is just an audible alarm, but if it's not, at least we've done our due diligence to determine if a crime has actually occurred. So I appreciate people bringing it to our attention and others, but I also appreciate it when everybody is informed. And so I would hope that people don't take that next step of, I'm not going to call 911, because not only are you potentially putting yourself in danger and or not having issues solved, but also your neighbors if you're not willing to call 911 in regards to something that may have occurred to them. So I appreciate the feedback. We'll continue to do our due diligence, and we'll address anything that we don't do right and continue to try to do better to serve all of you. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Chief. It sounds like you really want residents to call 911 because the more information you have, the better. So, Andrew, we have some more questions for emergency management. The next question was, during the recent storm event, cell phone service is down for most of all providers and portions of the city. For the majority of residents, this means that 911 service is not reachable. What can the city do through licensing, laws, or emergency response to increase the reliability of 911 access during weather and other emergencies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it highlights one of the fundamentals of disaster preparedness. In emergencies, in disasters, infrastructure is going to fail, whether it's telecommunications, power, road systems, regional logistics, your internet. Plan on that being down. And I think a windstorm, whether it's a 24-hour event or even 48 hours, possibly longer duration, kind of reinforces that fact that your emergency plan cannot be, I'm going to call 911. Because in a large-scale disaster, such as an earthquake, these services could be down for weeks, even with all the redundancies that we're building into them. People need to be prepared to deal with themselves for up to 2 weeks, have preparedness items, food, water, basic life-saving supplies, and to be able to, the training to be able to respond to themselves. Because even if 911 services were available, in a large-scale event, we simply do not have enough resources to be able to respond to everyone, such as it would happen on a day-to-day basis if you call 911 now. Now, that being said, there's a lot of training out there to get you there, whether it's online classes, whether it's resources provided through the City of Sammamish's preparedness site, whether it's CERT training, community emergency response team training, or training through the Red Cross or other partners. There's ways that you can prepare yourself and your family for a disaster. Now, going back specifically to the question that the writer wrote in, there is redundancies in 911 capabilities. For example, if you're on Verizon and a Verizon tower goes down and you need to call 911, an AT&T or T-Mobile tower will pick that up and get it to the dispatch center just the same. You can also text 911. It's a new ability with enhanced 911 within King County. So simply no different than if you were texting someone else. You enter the 2, you would just dial 911 and then send your message. This is definitely not a preferred way. However, in a crisis when cellular networks are busy, the likelihood that a text can get through is greater. You would want to send contact information and address information along with that text, though, because that is not included within, you're not talking one-on-one with the dispatcher. And lastly, in 2017, King County adopted a strategic plan for 911. It's focusing on fiscal technology to dedicate funds to make sure that we have redundant, interoperable, and resilient communication networks across the county. So calls aren't dropped, so there's greater resources. So when something does go down, some other form of technology is there to improve it. The strategic plan will also ensure that the county's E911 system migrates smoothly into the next gen 911. And we'll be along some of the best in the country as far as rapid and effective routing of requests and the effective development of evolving technologies and use of public resources. Thank you.
Great, Andrew. That was really helpful information to have. We have a couple other questions that came in as emergency management questions, but they might be a little out of scope, so I'm going to see what you think. The first one is regarding flooding caused by undersized retention ponds in Sammamish overflowing and flooding Allen Lake properties in Northeast 8th Street. Closing the road due to flooding blocks police, fire, emergency services, and school bus access to over 80 households, as well as damaging lakeside properties. Most are in the unincorporated King County, but the underlying problem is in Sammamish. What actions can we take to work with Sammamish to solve this problem?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. The Allen Lake flooding, or the area is actually outside of the Sammamish boundaries. It is an unincorporated King County. The commenter mentioned undersized retention ponds within Sammamish, and I'd have to argue against that. I've spoken with our public works crews. At every rain event, they're out there assessing these retention ponds. They are looking at the infrastructure, and they've not been able to identify any significant deficiencies or undersized capacity within these retention ponds. The area in question is near a lake, it is near wetland, it is a lower elevation than the plateau, and we do have significant rain events that are ever increasing due to climate, due to climate-related weather changes and seasonal weather. That being said, I am aware that the Public Works team in Sammamish has been working hand in hand with the King County and with the neighborhood that is being threatened to try to identify solutions, to try to identify mitigations. In the meantime, for the residents impacted by localized flooding, I would urge them to look into flood insurance. Often, it is not included within your regular homeowner policies, and flood insurance is the actual #1 mitigation you can do to protect your investment of your property and your household and your belongings, as well as again, disaster preparedness, understanding what the risks are. If you think you may be cut off in seasonal weather events or high flood events, possibly look at what your escape plan is. How are you going to get out? How are your children going to get back in from school? And if you see a severe weather warning or a flood advisory, be able to move out of that area fast and quickly. Michael?
Great, Andrew, that's really helpful information for that part of the community, because it seems as if they have a lot of concerns around that flooding. The next question, Andrew, back to you as well, is with road construction on 2 major roads in and out of Sammamish, are you in contact with the stakeholders to make sure proper lane lighting, pedestrian walkways, and bike lanes are created to make sure these roads will be safe for residents through the dark winter days? If so, what measures are being taken? If not, why not?
Well, specifically regarding, I think, the commenter's question, I'm not in contact with the stakeholders regarding capital improvement projects for this specific issue. Although I can tell you that this is something that the city of Sammamish does. They have public works standards that make their way into every capital improvement project that includes modifications or revisions to pedestrian right-of-ways, to bike lanes, to enhanced lightings, and all of those factors tie into these projects. When I get involved in public works projects, it's usually, again, regarding disaster mitigation, where we've identified issues, potentially flooding, potentially landslide or earthquake or seismic liquefaction hazards, and we're working within our public works infrastructure and process to design engineered solutions to hopefully reduce the impact of these problems.
Okay, Andrew, thank you so much for answering that question as well. Dave, we have a question for you that's actually going back to kind of COVID topics that we were talking about earlier. This question is about transit. What are my transit options during COVID?
There are a number of transit options here in Sammamish, and let me run through a few of those. King County Metro Bus Route 269 runs from Overlake in Redmond through Sammamish to Issaquah and is operating at reduced service levels. Additionally, Sound Transit Bus 554 runs from Issaquah on to Seattle. There are 2 pilot services offered in partnership with King County Metro that offer unique and safe ways to travel throughout Sammamish. That is Community Van and Community Ride. Let me describe those. Community Ride is an on-demand, curb-to-curb shuttle service taking you to destinations within designated service areas. Trips can be requested by using the new app, Community Ride, or calling 1-855-233-6043. Let me repeat that number, 855-233-6043. To see the updated service area more information, please visit our connectsammamish.us/mobility-hub, and we'll get that site up for you. Community Van is a volunteer-based shuttle service as another option, and it helps provide rides throughout the day, evenings, and weekends to destination as far as 2 hours one way. To request a trip, contact your Community Transportation Coordinator, that is a CTC, at communityvan@sammamish.us to help get you started. Since this service relies on community volunteers, the Community Van program is always seeking volunteers to support the community's mobility needs. If you're interested in being a volunteer, you can apply
by contacting your CTC, that is your Community Transportation Coordinator, so volunteers get to ride for free and never have to pay for gas or bridge tolls. Another option, if you're eligible for the ADA paratransport program, access can take you anywhere a Metro bus or Sound Transit light rail goes. To determine if you qualify, call 206-263-3113. I'll repeat that number again, 206-263-3113. All of these services are taking safety precautions to limit the spread of COVID-19. Safety shields have been installed to limit the spread between passengers and drivers, and vehicles are sanitized, masks are required, and the services are accepting cashless payments only. If you still have questions, your CTC can help you get to where you need to go and help answer questions for any of your transit question options. Please contact us at contact.sammamish.us/mobility-hub and ask a question in the Q&A tab, or you can email at communityvan@sammamish.us.
That's some really good information. I think it sounds like a great resource for the community. Thank you, Dave. Our next question is going back to Chief here. We have a resident that's interested in volunteering. He says he's been a volunteer member of the Redmond Police Department for 11 years. Is there a volunteer program for the Sammamish Police Department? How do citizens join the volunteer program? What are the volunteer program duties?
Sure. So since Sammamish Incorporated, and when I was here way back when, we have had volunteers as part of the department. So we currently have one volunteer, and we are always appreciative and will look to add additional volunteers and take advantage of their expertise and things that they can help us with. It's the program. It's just a matter of giving us a call, and then we can we'll do a background check, and then we look at how we can, again, take advantage of your time and your willingness to serve the residents. And it can be helping us to monitor and be engaged and get things out on social media so that we can continue to be transparent, keep people informed. It can help us as far as with the Sammamish Foundation, which looks to support local causes or assist in purchasing equipment, different types of things that can help either the police and or again local residents with the support of the police department. And so again, multiple ways, just general staff when front office staff, for example, has meetings, those types of things, just being able to be that first contact to the public at the front desk. So lots of different ways that we can use them, and obviously people are only available certain times. We understand that, and we'll do our best to make sure that we take advantage of it and appreciate it. So the best way is to contact Elena Hall at the Sammamish Police Station, and you can get on the website and get that number and make that phone call.
Sounds good. Sounds like some good volunteer opportunities. Our next question that we have is a question that we received quite a bit online, and is related to our current political climate. The question is being home to extremist websites that have been linked to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol a national public safety concern for you? Are you okay with being associated with far-right extremism? And we did receive this question online quite a bit, and where it is our position not to talk about specific businesses. The question was asked, and we answered the question online that we only know about businesses that have business licenses within the city of Sammamish, and we had no awareness of a business license with that specific business. And we do always want to reaffirm our position that Sammamish is a very diverse community, and that we really do take a position against discrimination. And we invite everyone to take a look at our webpage online, our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion webpage on Connect Sammamish, and that has a lot more information about our proclamations and the position that we take here in the city of Sammamish. We are back live with Chief Pengray again because we had a question come in that we thought was really important to answer. And so we're just going to take a moment to answer this question. Does the city have the authority to make requirements for police behavior in addition to those of the county sheriff? For instance, barring chokeholds, use of tear gas, etc.
So great question, and especially in the political climate right now and when people are again, it's about being informed. So I appreciate this question. The city of Sammamish contracts out with King County Sheriff's Office for its police resources. And the King County Sheriff's Office has a huge policy manual and procedures that all of us have to follow. And that includes areas about when we can use less lethal. So in this case, we have very specific policies that state when we can do certain things. In regards to chokeholds, we don't do them. And we've never done chokeholds. There was a carotid move that was very effective, and it was taught many, many years ago in the academy. Other agencies still do teach it, but because things can go bad quickly, and we haven't done that for at least 20 years. And so I understand people's concerns. Again, a chokehold or an armbar hold, on the throat is never used, shouldn't be used, and it obviously can create tragic situations. So we don't do that. And in fact, when there was a lot of media and social media things going out there after the George Floyd death, is there was an 8 can't wait, and it was policies that people wanted to see law enforcement put into their manuals and their procedures. In fact, the sheriff's office met 6 out of 8 of those, and since then we have adjusted other policies so that we can meet 8 out of 8. And we think that's obviously very important, but again, being informed, I think it's important that people know we're trying to do the best we can, are always willing to adjust and make sure that we are being transparent and using tools that will reduce tragedy from occurring, use those wisely, use those correctly, and constantly be trained in those. So whether it's tasers or pepper spray, again, has to be very specific about when and how and if we can use those and how we document. In regards to tear gas and some of the other more and other less lethal resources that are used that people become concerned about, those are used by tactical units for specific situations, and in order to do that, that has to go up through the chain of command to be approved. So we're constantly monitoring ourselves. We appreciate the public monitoring us as well, and we'll continue to do our very best to improve how we do business. Again, do it right with the least amount of force possible to make sure that everyone is safe. So again, great question. The city can always talk to the sheriff, and in the case of the new charter amendment, have a conversation with the executive or the council about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and make recommendations, again, so that we're constantly checking ourselves and trying to do things in the best interest of all those involved and what is legal.
That's really good. I'm glad we came back to this question because it's such an important question to answer, and I think you provided some great insight into that question. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.